He stood in that courtroom, chains biting into his wrists, barely 17, yet treated like the worst of criminals. The judge's voice was cold, final. Life. Just one word, and it shattered his future. But what the courtroom didn't know was that this young black teen wasn't as powerless as they thought. One phone call, one name, was about to turn the entire case upside down. How did a sentence meant to end his life become the start of something far bigger? This is the moment justice met its match. Marcus had always been the kind of kid who kept his head down and worked hard. 17 years old, top of his class, and dreaming of studying law one day. Ironic, considering where he would soon find himself. Most mornings started the same. A quick breakfast with his mom, a nod from his little sister still rubbing sleep from her eyes, and a determined walk to school. It wasn't a perfect neighborhood, but it was home. That morning felt no different. The sun was already climbing, kids were waiting for their buses, and Marcus had an important debate competition to prepare for. He had no idea his life was about to derail in ways he couldn't imagine. Just a few streets away, a confrontation was brewing, one that had nothing to do with him, yet would pull him in like a storm. A wrong place, wrong time moment. One witness pointed, one officer made a choice, and suddenly Marcus wasn't a promising student anymore. He was a suspect. The walk that usually led him toward his future was now leading him straight into a nightmare. But how does an innocent teenager prove his worth in a system built to see him as guilty first? The first sign that something was wrong came with the screech of tires. 2 patrol cars boxed him in before he even reached the school gates. Officers stepped out, hands on holsters, eyes already locked on him like he was prey. "You, stop right there!" one barked. Marcus froze, clutching his backpack. Confusion rushed in first, then fear. "What's going on?" he asked, voice shaking. No answer, just rough hands yanking the straps off his shoulders, spilling his books onto the pavement. A crowd gathered, whispering. He recognized faces, classmates, neighbors, but none stepped forward. "We got our guy," the officer muttered. "Your guy? I'm on my way to school." But it didn't matter. A store 2 streets over had been robbed minutes ago by someone fitting his description. Young, black, hoodie. The cuffs were cold against his skin as they pushed him into the back seat. He tried to catch the eye of one of the bystanders, tried to find anyone willing to say, "That's not him." But their eyes slid away. Hours blurred into questions he didn't understand and accusations that piled higher than the truth. A shaky witness pointed at him. The security footage? Grainy at best, but the figure in the hoodie was enough for them. By nightfall, Marcus wasn't just a promising student anymore. He was the prime suspect in an armed robbery. His mom arrived, frantic, clutching papers from his school and proof of where he'd been that morning. But the officers barely glanced at them. They had a confession they wanted, and a teenager they thought couldn't fight back. The next morning, he was led into a courtroom, still in the same clothes, still insisting they had the wrong person. The prosecutor's words were sharp, designed to stick, a danger to society. Each sentence felt heavier than the last. Marcus looked at the judge, hoping for reason, for fairness, but the judge's gaze was already cold, already decided. Life. The fire. Word fell like a stone in water, sending ripples through his world, through his mother's trembling hands, his sister's silent tears. But Marcus had one card left to play. One phone call. One name that would change everything, if he dared to use it. The courtroom was silent, except for the pounding in Marcus's chest. The word life still echoed in the air, a verdict delivered like a sentence written long before he ever stood there. His knees felt weak. His mother's muffled sobs reached him from the gallery, and for a moment, he couldn't breathe. This was it. His future stolen. His dreams buried under the weight of a system that had decided his worth before hearing his truth. The bailiff stepped forward to escort him away, chains clinking with every move. Marcus's mind raced, not with guilt, but with a single desperate thought. This can't be how my story ends. He turned to the judge, voice breaking. Can I make my one call now? Permission was granted with a dismissive wave, as if it didn't matter. They didn't know who he would call. They didn't care. With trembling hands, he dialed the number he had memorized but never thought he'd use. The courtroom, once impatient, began to shift as whispers spread. The name he spoke wasn't ordinary. It carried weight, power, history. Dad, they gave me life. On the other end, silence. Then a cold, controlled voice. I'm on my way. Gasps rippled through the room as the truth began to surface. His father wasn't just a man, he was the U.S. Attorney General. And now, the system that thought it could swallow a teenager whole had just declared war on the wrong family. Marcus lowered the phone, the echo of his father's promise still hanging in the air. For the first time since the cuffs closed around his wrists, he felt something dangerous, something powerful, hope. It didn't take long after that phone call for the tide to turn. Within hours, the courtroom that had dismissed Marcus as just another statistic was swarming with cameras, reporters, and federal agents. Evidence that had been ignored was suddenly reviewed. Witnesses who had been certain of their shaky memories started to hesitate. The case crumbled, not because the system found its conscience, but because power had finally walked into the room. Charges were dropped, the judge backtracked, and the officers quietly disappeared from the case file. Marcus walked out a free man, but not an unscarred one. Freedom didn't erase the nights he spent in a cold cell, the whispers of criminal that would follow him, or the hollow ache of realizing his innocence only mattered once power spoke for him. He returned to school, but the world no longer felt safe. Every siren made his stomach tighten. Every sideways glance reminded him how quickly life could be stolen, and that's the question this story leaves us with. How many Marcuses are there, without powerful fathers, without a lifeline to pull them out? How many are still sitting behind bars for crimes they didn't commit simply because of the color of their skin? Marcus got his second chance, but justice should never depend on privilege. It should be the starting point for everyone. So ask yourself, the next time you hear a story like his, will you scroll past it, or will you speak up? The stories shared on this channel are entirely fictional and created solely for entertainment. We believe in a world where everyone enjoys equal rights under the law and where society progresses in fairness, development, and civilization. Our aim is to share thought-provoking and meaningful stories that inspire positive change. Any resemblance to real people, events, or organizations is purely coincidental and unintentional. These stories do not reference any actual individuals, occurrences, or entities and carry no political or religious implications.